And joining me live now, Prime Minister Trudeau. Thank you so much for coming in this morning.
Glad to be here.
Let's begin here. We put this out on social media and we said, what questions do you have for the Prime Minister? You heard from people coast to coast here as well. And I'll be honest with you, there was a lot of negative sentiment. This was quite the year. Last time you joined us in 2018, I was a little bit more upbeat, and now there are a lot of questions. So I want to start here. What do you think you did well in 2019? What do you think needs work from what happened?
I think we were able to do a lot of things that made a difference in people's lives, from the Canada Child Benefit to investments in transit and infrastructure, to moving forward on housing, to doing lots of meaningful things. I think one of the things that people sort of felt, and I heard this during the election campaign, is we'd gotten a little disconnected from their daily concerns, and we weren't doing a good enough job of sort of sharing and reassuring them about the things we were doing. And I think that's one of the things that we have to think about. And what helps with that is better collaboration, more work with premiers, more work with other parties, and that's what a minority situation will deliver us.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting situation, but let's backtrack to what the year brought us. Last time we met, we've since been faced with the SNC-Lavalin affair. The campaign kicking off, and it was a bit of a nasty tone during the campaign. We saw the pictures, blackface, brownface, creating somewhat of a country divide, and a lot of people questioning you personally. How do you respond to that when someone questions you personally?
But that's what elections are about. They're about looking at who is stepping up and who wants to lead the country, and what kind of team they're bringing and what kind of values they stand for. And it's an important questioning. Electors, citizens have to be questioning their leaders on different things. And I think what they returned with was a clear number of issues that they care about. Doing more on climate change, doing more on gun control, doing more on health care, and doing it in a way that's more more engaged with partners and other parties. And that's.
Do you feel that there's a repair needed for various communities, or do you think that you've done that throughout the campaign? You've sort of answered to some of these photos, these questionable photos that we've spoken of, and that you are ready to move forward?
Oh, no, there's lots more to do. We know that things like anti-black racism, systemic bias, systemic discrimination and unconscious bias are real things that require a lot more work, and that's why we're partnering with communities. We're going to be working hard to make sure that there is better awareness and understanding of the very real discrimination that racialized Canadians face.
Okay, Prime Minister, moving forward in the House of Commons, not the majority that you were looking for, very different from what we saw from your 2015 win. And now Andrew Scheer stepping down as the leader of the Conservatives. There is just so much going on. We could potentially go back to the polls within a couple of years. Are you ready for that?
I think what we do is we focus on how we can get as much done for Canadians as possible. I mean, this is, regardless of what's happening inside Parliament, there is a time of anxiety, of worries, of people, stressing about making ends meet, wondering where their jobs are going and whether they're going to get to retirement, wondering about their kids' future. And despite all the sort of internal politicking that's going to happen on Parliament Hill, we have to make sure that we are delivering in a real way that actually has an impact on people, that helps them in their daily lives. And that, I think, is something that I've seen willingness from all parties to work together on.
Yeah, we'll get to the specific issues in just a moment, but do you think that you can do that with this minority government, with somewhat of a division in the House of Commons, that you can get real things passed?
Well, I think if you look at it issue by issue, there's a broad consensus on a number of things, like moving forward on more healthcare investments to help people find a family doctor, to move forward on pharmacare. There's a broad consensus around doing more on gun control. There's a broad consensus around doing more to fight climate change. So yes, there's going to be need to listen and work together. But I think on those things, Canadians expect us, rightly so, to get those done.
You mentioned gun control, so let's begin there. We know that your government has been researching for quite some time what to do and looking at a ban on assault weapons. We don't have a timeline on that. Do you have a timeline on that?
We're going to do it soon. We've asked Bill Blair, who's well known to people in the GTA, to lead on this file. We did do a number of big things in the previous mandate to strengthen gun control, and we're taking more big steps now, banning assault weapons and working with cities to ban handguns as well.
there's a lot of critique when it comes to gun violence in our city, across Canada, of course. If this is actually the answer, if banning handguns, banning assault rifles is the actual answer, or is it investing more when it comes to gangs, that sort of culture? What is your answer to that, and where can the money go?
The answer is we need to do all of that. I mean, Bill Blair is someone who has worked to combat gun violence at all levels, for much of his career, and he knows, and we know, that part of it is investing in community centers and support for young people. Part of it is an anti-gang strategy. Part of it is strengthening the border so there's less illegal flow of guns. Yes. Part of it is strengthening gun control laws as well, including eliminating weapons that are designed to kill the largest number of people in the shortest amount of time, that is military-style assault rifles. Judiciary
bail reform is also a big one that many have brought up.
Lots of elements that we have to look at, yeah.
So we're looking at that right now.
Absolutely.
Potential timeline there?
We're going to move forward as quickly as possible. As you pointed out, in a minority situation, we don't know when the next elections are going to be coming, so let's get as much done as we possibly can as quickly as we can.
Our friends in the West. This is obviously a big piece of the puzzle here. Wexit. You know, a lot of people saying, do we even want to be part of Canada when the oil and gas industry, these are Jason Kenney's words, Alberta Premier, that this government is actively hostile to the energy industry. Then we're seeing several BC First Nations challenging the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. How do you answer to this and try to say, we are all united and I'm doing what I can, when there's such a difference in where they see priorities?
Well, I think, first of all, you have to recognize that people right across the country are living with anxiety, economic anxiety, but also anxiety about what their kids' future is going to look like, whether it's climate change or whether it's better jobs. So that is particularly real right across the country. But it's really hitting hard in Alberta and Saskatchewan, where oil prices have been down for a while, hundreds of thousands of jobs lost. Yes. It is a real pain point for people. And that's why we recognize that we need to work with the provincial government to support people, to make sure that there are good jobs, not just as handouts or charity, but because we need Albertans' innovation, their leadership, their technology advances on energies, so that we can actually create those solutions for the future. We've got big challenges ahead of us as a country, but we have overcome big challenges before, especially when we pull together. And despite some voices that are playing up differences, I know Canadians want to pull together, and we want to make sure that Albertans and people in Saskatchewan are fully supportive of the path forward.
How is your relationship with the premiers there?
The relationship is good. We're always going to find things to agree on. There'll always be moments where we disagree, and we disagree a lot on how ambitious we need to be on fighting climate change, but we don't disagree on the fact that we need to do more to support families in Alberta and Saskatchewan, support people who are anxious about the way the world is changing very quickly and whether their jobs are going to be there, whether their kids' jobs are going to be there.
The environment is a big one. We got a lot of response. Many people wondering what the Liberals are going to be doing in the battle here against climate change. The Environment Minister recently saying disappointed in the UN climate talks in Madrid, not enough to be done. We have seen a bit of a change with the carbon tax rebate. It's a little bit less than many people initially thought. Where do you move from here, and how fast can you move?
Oh, I think we need to be more and more ambitious. We've laid out a plan that increases our price on pollution by $10 a ton up until 2022. So we're going to end up with a $50 a ton price. That's a big thing right across the country. But we've also done a lot more things, whether it's, when we came into office in 2015, about 1% of our coasts and oceans were protected. Now we're at 14%. We know that nature-based solutions are really important. We're moving forward on banning plastics. We're phasing out coal plants. There's lots of big things we're doing, but there's lots more to do. And
Absolutely.
We need to do it in ways that doesn't put all the responsibility and weight on families. We need to make sure we're supporting them as we move through, and that's what the carbon tax with the climate action incentive, the return that is greater than what an average family pays with a carbon tax, makes sure that it's affordable while at the same time we're ambitious in the fight.
something as simple as the single-use plastics, as mentioned. Is there a specific timeline on that? We were looking, I guess, 2021 was the earliest that something could potentially happen. Now things obviously up in the air with a minority government. Are you still aiming toward that timeline?
Actually, it's not so much up in the air because there's a consensus. The Green Party, obviously, the NDP, and even the Bloc are very much supportive of us moving forward on banning single-use plastics. I think there's an important thing to reflect on, and that's why we've given ourselves till 2021 to make sure that we're doing the right things the right way, that we're that people are remaining able to find alternatives or necessary solutions. But working with industry, working with communities on banning single-use plastics is something we're going to continue doing.
I want to talk a little bit about international relations, and there are a lot of areas to go here. But first, one that went viral. And many people calling it the NATO fiasco, and, a hot mic, which we've all learned is probably not the best. But unfortunately, there was a conversation referencing President Trump. When you saw this come out, what did you think to yourself, and how do you make good on that?
Well, I think as we do, as I've tried to do every situation with the president, is work constructively through it. And we were able just a few days later to sign the new NAFTA agreement, which is a really, really big thing. So we're going to keep working together despite things that happen in the relationship. I think we've been able to do that over the past couple of years by remaining focused on what's actually going to matter for Canadians and for Americans. And that's where we've stayed. And that means that with the moving forward on the new NAFTA, there is security, there is predictability, and there is mostly economic growth for Canadians.
Do you have a date on ratification for that, or when the NDP will support a ratification?
We're reasonably confident we're going to have the votes to do it. The issue is how quickly can we do it, because we know Mexico's done it. The U.S. is going to move forward very aggressively. We might, because of our parliamentary calendar, be the last parties to ratify, so we're going to have to try and get to it as quickly as we can.
Are you pleased with it?
Yes, I am.
It's a good deal for Canada.
It's a good deal for Canada, and the changes that we worked on the Democrats with to be able to get the support in the House around labor standards in Mexico, around more protection, more flexibility for biologics on consumers to bring down drug prices. These are improvements over the deal we signed even a year ago.
I want to ask about Canada-China relations, and in the one of the first moves coming from the Conservatives is bringing in this special committee that examines the relationship between China and Canada. That being the first move, we saw what happened in the last year with Huawei exec Meng Wanzhou, 2 Canadians still detained in China. One, where's the status with the Canadians? Is there any movement?
It continues to be a big priority for us. We know that they've just hit the 1-year mark in their detention. We have been engaging throughout the year at all levels with the Chinese government. We've been having our allies put pressure on China as well, bringing it up, the fact that 2 Canadians being detained is a problem for people around the world. It remains our #1 issue that we continue to work on, but we know it's a complex situation that is going to take some time. The fact that the opposition parties want to be helpful on this, they could be helpful if we move forward in a constructive way and stay focused on them. My worry in a political situation, they might play parliamentary politics with it a little bit, and that could have sort of negative impacts either on the relationship or on Canadians. But I'm going to cross my fingers that we're actually able to work collaboratively, because I think that's what Canadians expect, and that's what people deserve.
That's what they're hoping for.
Indeed.
If that was their first move, though, to create this special committee, does that question their ability to feel confidence in the Liberals, in you?
Well, an opposition party is there to oppose, to challenge the government, to take it into account. It's a strong part of our system, and they take that very seriously, and they do that.
I want to ask about affordability, because a lot of the questions that we were receiving was, how am I going to pay my bills? What am I going to do as a recent grad? I can't move out. I can't buy a home. The term middle class was thrown around quite a bit during campaigning. Can you define who the middle class is? I think
Canadians know who's in the middle class and know what their families are facing, and we focus more on the actual issues. You mentioned a recent grad, for example. someone who's making a recent grad will, once we bring in the changes, no longer have to pay back their student loans until they're making at least $35,000 a year. That is a big reassurance because we need people going to school. Someone who has student loans who starts a family will get to put pause on their student loans and on the interest until their kids turn 5, because we want them focusing on giving the best future to their kids. These are things that we're helping students with graduates with, because we know getting more education is good for them, but it's also good for our communities and good for our country. On affordability for families, we're going to be increasing the Canada Child Benefit by 15% for babies, for kids under 1, because we know there's so many extra costs when you first start a family. And that Canada Child Benefit has lifted hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty already, and there's more to do. We're also moving forward on investing in housing to make sure that for example, a recent grad looking to buy their first home can get that support right across the country, recognizing that in Toronto, in the Lower Mainland, and in Victoria, there are higher housing prices than anywhere else. So we're expanding that first-time home buyers credit to make sure that their mortgage payments are more affordable and they can get that first home. There's lots of things we're doing, but there's lots more to do, and I look forward to hearing from the NDP and others on issues that they think we should move forward on.
Let's look at the figures. So the fall economic update just released yesterday. So the deficit ballooning, saying it would rise to $26.6 billion in the 2019-20. That is up from the earlier projection, of course, which was at $19.8 billion. And then between 2019 and 2024, deficits expected to outpace those projections by roughly $35 billion. How do you balance this and say, yes, we still also want to invest here, there, and everywhere?
Well, understanding that we have a very different perspective than the Conservatives did on growing the economy and helping Canadians. They think that cuts and austerity, and that's the argument they made in the election, is how you benefit people and grow an economy. We think that actually putting more money in the pockets of families to help them through the week, putting more money into things like public transit and housing are the things that are going to actually give people an opportunity to get better jobs, to go back to school, to build a stronger economy. So our choice to invest in a responsible way. I mean, our debt as a size of the economy is the lowest in the G7, and it's on a track to getting lower every time. So we do believe in fiscal responsibility, but we know that putting more money in the pockets of Canadians in smart ways and investing in their communities is the way to ensure growth.
Prime Minister, we are running out of time, but I want to leave you with this. We're looking to 2020. There's a lot to be done. What is your #1 priority?
Probably affordability as we fight climate change, making sure that people can be confident about their family's finances, their family's future, while at the same time they see us fighting climate change in ways that points out that there's a lot of growth, a lot of opportunity, a lot of new jobs in tackling this global pressing priority and local priority.
Quite the year ahead. Prime Minister, appreciate your time.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break here on BT, and we'll see you after this.